NFL fans, welcome back to a brand new episode of the J All Day NFL Show. Eagles fans, we are less than 1 week away from the NFL draft. So we're going to do a fun little exercise today where I'm going to go through all of the Eagles draft picks. We're going to do a full 7-round mock, but defensive players only. This way we can kind of figure out what defensive players are available with each of our draft slots, right? It's a fun exercise. I did the offensive one earlier this week. I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description down below, so make sure you check that out. Let's get into the video. All right, Philadelphia Eagles fans, before we get into this video, we're only 21 subscribers away from 15K. So if you want more Birds content, more NFL content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So in this defensive only mock draft, we're picking at 32 overall. There's some guys I really like. Omar Norman-Lott, I'm not as high on him as some people are. Kevin Winston's on the board, Trey Amos, Ben Morrison, Xavier Watts, Mykel Williams, Landon Jackson, Tyleik Williams, Derek Harmon, all players that the Eagles could potentially draft here at the bottom of the first round. But they did bring Trey Amos in for a top 30 visit, and I think out of all I just like him way better than Maxwell Harrison. I think people are overvaluing Harrison because of the speed a little bit. So for me, in the first round, defense only, we're going to go Trey Amos. He's got really good length, great ball skills, improved every single year in college. Just an overall very talented guy. You know, gave up 2 touchdowns this year, but only a 54.5 passer rating against, and he also added 3 interceptions. Very, very impressive player. I would be happy if the Eagles got Trey Amos at the bottom of the first round. Okay, guys, here we are. Now, we're up at the bottom of the second round, 64 overall, right? Taking a look at all the players on the board, defensive players only, right? So this is a defensive only draft. So we're only going to be concentrating on the defensive side of the football, right? So we got a cornerback early. So here we are in round 2. And we can double up on picks just because we're doing an exercise of who could potentially be available at these certain spots. Andrew Mukuba, the safety, is on the board. Elijah Roberts is a guy I definitely like as well. So is Josiah Stewart. Really, really impressive guy at Michigan. 91 overall grade, had 9 sacks. Very productive. 6'1", 245. He definitely fits that bill of the outside linebacker type. And I do think we could find some value at safety maybe a little bit later in this draft. So I'm going to go Josiah Stewart, the edge defender from Michigan, with our 64th pick overall. Now, we are up at 96 overall. I definitely think safety in the third round is a very interesting spot for sure, or linebacker. I do like that as well. Taking a look at who's left, Dorian Strong's on the board, Savion Jones, Jamari Caldwell. Jacob Parrish was also in for a top 30 visit, so he's an interesting player here in the third round. You know, I do like Jacob Parrish. Pretty good player. Probably more of like a nickel guy. You know, could play outside, but probably more of a nickel in my opinion. Jonas Sanker, the safety from Virginia, is on the board. A lot of guys really like Billy Bowman from Oklahoma as a third, fourth round safety. 5'10", 220 pounds, right? He's a big play machine, man. Very talented player. I really wanted to go safety here, guys. Touchdowns allowed to interceptions. Pretty, gives up some touchdowns. Overall, pretty good player. I think he's a solid overall safety at, this position in the draft, 96 overall. Billy Bowman has definitely been going up draft boards because of that elite speed, right? 4.42 in the 40, really fast player. That's why I like him at 96 overall, potentially. Now we're up at 134 overall, guys. Taking a look at the board here, we're going to square it up with defensive players, safety, interior defensive lineman, edge, and then linebacker. I really do think at the bottom of the fourth round is really when we're going to start to look at linebackers, but there are some interior linemen that I do like. Cameron Jackson's on the board. He is more of a nose guy, 6'6", 342. If the Eagles think that Jordan Davis, they're not going to give him the fifth-year option, they're going to move on from him. Cameron Jackson and Peebles are guys that, Peebles is a little smaller, probably more of a DN in that 3-4 scheme, but people really like him. But Cameron Jackson, bringing in another defensive, nose tackle type of guy, I really like. And I also like Jack Kaiser, but he could be a hanging around that 161, 164. There are some linebackers I like there. So I'm going to go the nose tackle, Cameron Jackson, at the bottom of the 4th round. I think that makes some sense there, guys. Now, we're up at 161 overall. Remember, we got a bunch of picks. 161, 164, 165, 168. A ton of 5th round picks. So let's take a look here, guys. Corner, safety, D lineman, edge, linebacker. Let's go. There are some interesting interior defensive linemen. Tim Smith from Alabama is on the board. I do like him. 6'4", 314. Really decent player. You know, I do like Malachi Moore, the safety. If he's available, you got to grab him. I love Malachi Moore at 161. He's a great player, you know. And now we're up at 164 overall. And now I definitely want to concentrate on linebacker. Danny Stutzman's on the board. Jay Higgins, Kobe King. I think Kobe King is probably the most talented out of the bunch, in my opinion. Back-to-back 83 grades. Really jumped up in his production. 74 tackles. Very impressive. Coverage stops, pretty good too. You know, overall, just a pretty good overall linebacker, right? 6'1", 248. He's got good size, you know. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but out of all these other guys, Cody Simon's a really interesting player as well. He's definitely in that 3-4 mold. Man, I do like Cody Simon as well. Really talented guy. You know, good feel for run defense, traditional between the tackle linebacker. You know, definitely, you know, 235 is a smaller frame for an off-ball linebacker. I like Kobe King. I think he holds up a little bit better. They did bring him in for a visit too, so I'm going to go Kobe King at 164. And then at 165, here's all the defensive players we selected in this defense-only draft. Obviously, this isn't realistic, guys, but these are the guys who could be available in these potential rounds for positions of need. You know, when we take a look, linebacker, 5th round. I do like Malachi Moore in the 5th round. If we could add a safety there. Billy Bowman is more of a, you know, higher regarded player at the safety position. He's a big play guy. Cameron Jackson is a great nose tackle for sure. We got an edge guy. You know, we got interior defensive line. I do think that Jalix Hunt is going to be a formidable player, and so is a Jomo. So we're not like, the Eagles aren't desperate to draft these positions early if they don't see the value, right? So at 165 overall, cornerback O'Donnell Fortune is a guy I really, really like. There's some corners later in this draft that I find very, very intriguing for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Linebacker as well. Tim Smith makes some sense. 6'4", 314. He's not super explosive, right? And to get after the passer, I want to see a little more athleticism from a guy like that. O'Donnell Fortune, the cornerback from South Carolina, is very, very valuable. 6'1", 185. You know, he could be really interesting in the later rounds. And I would love to add O'Donnell Fortune, a guy like that, in the 5th round, right? Now, I want to look at edge in the 5th round. A guy like Ja Joyner is available from Minnesota. He's an interesting guy, 6'5", 265. You know, that 3-4 DN, I think Ja Joyner would fit really good. So would R.J. Oben, 6'3", 262. Big enough to be that kind of 3-4 DN, but Joyner's a little bit, you know, 6'5", 265. He's a really interesting player. Ja Joyner is a guy that I want to kind of focus on. All right, Philadelphia Eagles fans, don't take a look at these grades because we're obviously doing defense only. These are just players that I like at these particular rounds, right? A guy like Billy Bowman at the almost 100th overall, 96 overall is interesting. Cameron Jackson makes some sense too in the 4th round, 134 overall. I do like Malachi Starks at 161 overall. The Eagles need safety help, so given these bad grades for a team that is desperate for safety help makes no sense. But these later picks make some sense. Kobe King, 164 overall. O'Donnell Fortune, I think it's great value in the 5th round. Ja Joyner, the edge defender, another guy, great value in the 5th round. So these later picks are going to be very dependent on what we do early in the draft. So if we go Trey Amos at 32 overall, we're probably not going to bring in a guy like O'Donnell Fortune in the 5th round. You know, something like that wouldn't happen. And the same thing with Billy Bowman. If we go safety in the 3rd round, we're not going to bring in another safety a couple picks later at 161 overall. But like, I just want to look at every pick and kind of determine what players are available in these particular spots. Because if we haven't won safety and then we're up in the 5th round at 161 overall and Malachi Moore from Alabama is still available, that's going to be a great value pick. Get great value. And I think there's going to be great value in the 4th and 5th round with like the safety spot, maybe some offensive linemen. But again, this is defense only. I do like these first 2 picks. If they went, Amos at 32 and Josiah Stewart at 64, I'd be pretty happy with that, in my opinion. And then we could address, edge defender in the 5th round. A guy like John Joyner is super explosive. He's got the length. He's big enough to kind of set the edge as a 3-4 DN. I think that's very interesting. They brought Kobe King in for a visit, Trey Amos in for a visit. So take a look at those top 30 guys. I'll do a video on that breaking down all the top 30 guys later today. I'm going to try to get out a ton of Eagles material this weekend because we're 1 week away from the draft, guys. I want to prepare you guys of who the Eagles could potentially take. So if you want more Eagles content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you so much. Peace.